Okay, so welcome. The subject tonight is not Havdalah, sorry, is Yahrzeit. We were discussing Havdalah, is Yahrzeit. And so as I sometimes like to do before we get into reading and looking at some images and things, what's your experience with Yahrzeit? We'll see the definitions and so on, but do you remember lighting Yahrzeit candles as a kid, or anybody want to just chime in with some thoughts? Okay.
Oh, it was just a memorial of a loved one, a memorial of their death, I believe.
Yes.
Not a
Yeah.
memorial of birth, it was a memorial of when they died.
Right. One of the interesting things is in Jewish tradition, the birthday held no significance. I remember my grandmother didn't know her birthday. It was just not something anybody would bother remembering. And when she came to Ellis Island, at least the story goes, some of these stories are apocryphal, but the story goes that they asked for her birthday and she didn't know. So I think she just chose April 1st. And I don't know why, maybe April Fool's Day. I'm sure she wasn't aware of that tradition, but there is no tradition in Judaism of celebrating a birthday. But having said that, we definitely want to celebrate Maxine's. Although your birthday was 7 months ago, that birthday 7 months ago, you were 100, and so Yasha Koach,
Wow.
Ad Me'ah Esrim, and I would say most of my students, Maxine, by the time they have attained your age, have been dead for about 20 years. So so I congratulate you on, as I said it before, I tried to say this delicately, of not only attaining the age of 100, but as far as I can tell, bringing all your marbles along with you to your 100th birthday. And so that's definitely worth recognizing.
May I ask Maxine a question? Because she's 100. So we're talking about in the you were born in the 1920s.
1923.
So by the time, see, for most of us, we're a little younger. I'm just a little younger than that. But for some of you, it's a little more. But I'm thinking back, you really were alive and well in your 30s when Israel was formed. What was it like before?
Oh, that's a good question. So what sense did you have, Maxine, of Israel and the existence of Israel, which was then called Palestine, pre-1948? Was there much discussion as you were growing up of the Holy Land and
definitely. Oh, Israel was definitely the Holy Land, and hope for Israel to be, recognized as a true state. Absolutely, yes. We never forgot. Very much a part of our daily living. Israel, absolutely.
And they had, I think, in those days, the Jewish National Fund and the little pushkin to put coins in. We talked about. I talked about. I talked about. Okay, so I want to talk about Yahrzeit, and actually, I'll let's see. I'm gonna do a share screen. How do I do this now? First I gotta pull up the image. Okay, there it is. And I want to show you what I prepare for every funeral. I think you can see this now, the Yahrzeit dates for John Doe. You see that? Okay.
Yes.
So Yahrzeit dates for John Doe. And of course, John Doe's Hebrew name is Ploni ben Ploni. Oh, I should have said Ploni ben Ploni u Plonit. So what I always prepare is a sheet just like this with the Hebrew date. I prepare this for people who want to light a candle on the Hebrew date. So this would be for someone, I just changed the name, for someone who died on the 12th of Nisan, a year ago or so. And then I have a little program where it's easy for me to kind of cut and paste dates in, and I give them a 30-year calendar with the instruction that the Yahrzeit candle should be lit at sunset the evening before the Yahrzeit. So that's just a little show and tell.
They can't get the funeral director's annual calendar on Rosh Hashanah and have the Hebrew calendar.
Yeah, but you have to know the Hebrew date of the. I mean, I don't know if you're kidding, but
I'm not well, I am, I'm not, because you just gave the Hebrew date as 12th day of Nisan. So it's always
Yeah.
the 7th day of, it's the date, the other date changes, that's all.
yes, no. I understand. Again, I don't know if you're serious, but most people do not know the Hebrew date that someone died. Jerry.
No, you need a
Yeah,
Hebrew
that's
calendar,
right.
or in an iPhone and
Not
probably
sure.
in other devices, you can just
That's
add the
exactly what I
number.
was going to say, Alan. There's
Yeah.
plenty of apps out there that are very simple to use. And that's a great thing because you might not remember, or you may have multiple people you have to keep track of, and you might confuse the dates. So there's plenty of free apps out there that you can get for an Android or iPhone that will track that for you and take care of it.
So
Yeah,
Rabbi, you have to take it off your list. Earlier you said this confusion on things like Havdalah and Pesach is a reason you have a reason to exist. But what Jerry and I are saying, this can come off your list because there's lots of ways to do things.
and I would say not even close, because I would say of the people whose funeral, the families for whom I'm conducting funerals, 95% really don't know much about the tradition of Yahrzeit, don't have a good insight into the Hebrew dates and so on. And so they're going to get this from me whether they like it or not. Ken and Patricia.
The one thing I thought was interesting, the first time I used one of those apps, I had to know if the person died in the morning or the evening.
Oh,
Yes.
right.
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 So one of the
Very good.
questions I always ask is, what time did they die? And as we'll see in the article, there will be a bit of a discussion about that. Yes, because I think, as you know, the Hebrew date changes at sunset. So if someone, if I got a call tonight or tomorrow and someone said they died today, Wednesday, I would have to ask before or after sunset. And I know, like, Mount Sinai actually has, I don't know if you'd call this an app, but you can register on their system. Just put your relatives' dates in, the date they died, and then they will send you an email, actually a series of emails, alerting you of upcoming Yahrzeits, which is helpful.
So I know that Adar Elohim had this, and my current temple has it. If you fill out the right form in their software, they're going to notify you according to English date or Hebrew date, depending on how the congregant wants it. They get to choose, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think now there is software which makes it relatively easy for the synagogue to do that. When I was doing this at Temple near me in Camarillo, there was no such software, or if there was, I was not aware of it. And I had a guy who was in his 90s who was a real computer whiz. I mean, he actually had worked for database management and things, and he created a program to do this, and even a mail merge, so that on a given, like, I don't know, Monday or Tuesday, he would just walk over and hand me a stack of 11 or 12 letters, or actually would do it once a month, and for the 4. So anyway, yes, so it gets a little complicated. Okay, so let's take a look at an article. Let's see. Okay, I presume you can see okay, so this is a Wikipedia article. It's not very long, and I think it's helpful. I think I'll read the introduction. So Yahrzeit is a Yiddish word, that there's the Yiddish spelling, Yahrzeit or Yahrzeit, literally year time plural, Yisreiten, I guess. Yeah, Yahrzeit, I'm looking at the transliteration, is the anniversary of a death in Judaism. It is traditionally commemorated by reading the Kaddish in the synagogue and by lighting a long burning candle. We'll see some pictures of candles in a moment. I pulled out a candle that I have right here. Okay, so would someone like to read, beginning with name?
I'll take it if no one wants.
Thank you, Joanna.
The word
Oh, yeah.
Yahrzeit is a borrowing from the Yiddish Yahrzeit, ultimately from the Middle High German Yahrzeit. It is a double doublet of the English word yeartide, use of the word to refer to a Jewish death anniversary dates to at least the 15th century, appearing in the writings of Shalom of Neustadt, Isaac of Tirana, and Moses Mintz. Mordechai Yaffe also uses the term in his 1612 work, Levush ha-Tekelet. Though of Yiddish origin, many Sephardic and Mizrahi communities adopted the word, which likely spread through rabbinic literature. Variants of the word are found in the Judeo-Arabic Yahrzeit or Yahrzat, Ladino, Judeo-Italian, Judeo-Tajik, and Judeo-Tat. Yosef Chaim of Baghdad notes a once common false etymology of the word as a Hebrew acronym. Other names for the commemoration include Nahalah in Hebrew, Meldado and Años in Ladino, and Sal in Judeo-Persian.
Yeah,
I hope
and hold on a second.
pronouncing.
Sorry?
I hope I'm pronouncing correctly.
Yeah, well, I'm not terribly no. I'm sure it's Año in Ladino. So I think I have a close-up of this. Whoops. No, this is the. Can you see the Yahrzeit candles?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I had a close-up of the other image too. Okay,
Now,
so
why
yeah,
would there be a 2-day yard sale?
yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. I have no idea.
I only ask great
I've
questions.
never heard of one for 2 days. And the only reason I'm even aware of it is because this actually, as you'll see, oh, here's the other image. Yeah, okay. So I just giving you a slightly bigger image, and it's a little hard for me to, yeah, this is actually what I think this is pretty much what I just did. So here is, let's see, what's the early 20th century Yahrzeit table in the collection of the Jewish Museum of Switzerland. So it's basically Avotai HaYikarim, which means beloved parents, and then the names, and I think this is just Mo Yaakov Bar Shlomo, and so that's his name. I guess his name was Mo, and they didn't want to talk about a Hebrew name, and then it's Niftar Chet, the 8th day of Tevet, and that's the year. And here's presumably his wife, Marat Gittel bat Reb Moshe, and Niftara, and her date of passing. And I think if we could blow this up, this would be his, or I'm not sure who's who, but the exactly what I just showed you. So I'm not oh yeah, Mutter and Vater. So this is the woman's Yahrzeit calendar and the man. So that's that.
There's Rabbi, there's a technical answer for the 2-day, if I can tell you, or Google says if a Yom Tov or Shabbat is the day before the Yahrzeit, and you don't therefore light the candle when it's a day that
Okay.
you wouldn't light a candle, then you would light it before the
Okay,
day before.
that makes sense to me. That there's actually going to be a discussion of some of those things which I didn't study, but I glanced at, and I didn't see that. But anyway, maybe we'll see it. Okay, Joanne, you want to continue? Oh,
Okay.
oh yeah. So you can have, as you know, Cheryl's holding up a little plug-in Yahrzeit, and I keep this on my table, you know, which is just a little. I think you can see it. Yeah, you can't really see it turn on and off. But anyway, there's a little switch. The one Cheryl has, I think I have one of those too. You just plug into the wall. And, you know, some people will kind of look down on those. But I think it makes sense to me because if electricity is fire, then why not have a electric Yahrzeit? I got no problem with that at all. And if you ever, you know, are on a ship, and you want to light Shabbat candles or Yahrzeit candles or Hanukkah candles or candles for a holiday, which I have done, be it
Or in a hospital.
or in a hospital, yeah, that's probably even more common. Yeah, they will not let you have an open flame, so they will be using those. Okay, thank you. Let's continue, Joanne, with history.
All right. The tradition of commemorating a death anniversary in Judaism has ancient origins. During the Talmudic era, it was common to observe the date of a father's or teacher's death by fasting or by abstaining from consuming meat and wine. The Gemara's discussion suggests that this was a voluntary practice in accordance with the directive to honor one's father while alive and after his death. Rashi notes that it was customary to gather around the grave of a distinguished individual on the anniversary of his death. The modern practice of observing Yahrzeit for parents likely originated among the Jewish communities of medieval Germany, later being adopted by Sephardic Jews.
Yeah, so I guess it's a pretty old custom. The word itself, Yahrzeit, is a Yiddish word, so it would definitely be later. Okay, continue.
Customs date of observance. Yahrzeit is typically observed on the anniversary according to the Hebrew calendar of the date of death of an immediate family member or outstanding individual. Some authorities hold that when an individual was not buried within 2 days of their death, the first Yahrzeit is instead held on the anniversary of their burial. There are also exceptions when the date falls on Rosh Chodesh or in a leap year of the Hebrew calendar.
Yeah, we're going to get to all those exceptions in a moment. So it is interesting that you actually don't start observing Shiva or mourning until after the funeral of someone, but the Yahrzeit is observed on the anniversary not of the funeral, but the anniversary of their passing. And I've had on at least 2 occasions hear a funeral director at a cemetery when they were giving the Shiva candles. The Shiva candles is a 7-day candle. And I remember on at least 2 occasions, the funeral director said, gave the Shiva candle to the family and said, "You light this at sundown tonight." And that puzzled me, and I actually did some checking. And you don't. You light the Shiva candle when you immediately get home. And so I asked this guy, who's very knowledgeable. He said, "Oh, I just assume you light candles at sunset." He said he couldn't quite remember where he heard it, but anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, so so this is actually I'll kind of go through this somewhat quickly. Okay, so if the date of passing is the first day of a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh is the beginning of the month, and some years months are 29 days, some years months are 30 days. I have to tell you, none of these things ever come up in my world of being a rabbi. It's basically telling you, if it's this date of passing, when do you light the situation on the day of Yahrzeit? So years later, Rosh Chodesh is only 1 day. When the person died, it was 2 days. So you light it on the 29th day. Actually, let me see if there's anything here that is. So there's a bunch of Rosh Chodesh thing. The only ones that I remember wondering about, and fortunately my program spits this out, is I think you know that in some years we have an extra month. In fact, this year we have an extra month of Adar. And so the issue is, if someone dies in Adar 2 in a leap year, and in the year which you're celebrating or observing their passing is a leap year, then you would light it, let's say, on the 7th day of Adar 2. But if it's not in a leap year, you light it, of course, in the only month of Adar that exists. But anyway, I guess the other thing is Shabbat or Yom Tov, you observe Yahrzeit on the date of their passing. And I would say you would light it just before sunset on Shabbat, so on a Friday night. But yeah, I guess if you had, what I would have done is, let's say you're observing Yahrzeit on a Saturday night. I would just wait till after Havdalah to light the candle.
Yeah, I would also, but I think that's not necessarily the context of the traditional way, which is where the 2-day gets invented.
Right. And it may be the issue now is You know, what do you do if the person's like the second day of of Passover? So that may be some of the
it's
reasons why you need a
I know
2-day
that when
candle.
it's not an issue because when it's only Shabbat and Yom Kippur that you can't light at all. The rest of the time, any other Yom Tip, you can light from an existing flame. You can't strike a match, but you can use a candle that's
Yeah.
already burning to light another candle.
Yes, that is
So
true.
what
You're
you do is
allowed to.
before the start of the holiday, you light something that's going to burn for at least 2 days or however long you need, so that when the time comes, you can use it to light another one.
Yeah, and I guess if people want to be ultra strict, they would not do what you just mentioned, Stephen. But my understanding is exactly the same as yours, that you are allowed to transfer. So if you wanted to light a candle and have it burn for 2 days, they have them. I've never actually seen one sold anywhere, a 2-day
No,
Yahrzeit candle.
well, what you could do is like you light. Well, there's certainly lots of candles that burn for one day for at least 25 hours. So you light one right before the start of either the holiday or Shabbat or whatever, and then 20 and you 4 hours later you use it to light another one. 24 hours, so that you use that to light another one.
Yeah.
Because I think the rule is during Shabbat and Yom Kippur you can't even transfer, but any Yom Tip besides that you can use one to light another.
Yes.
So what you do if there's a 2-day Yom Tip and you need to light in the middle is you light one before the start of the Yom Tip, or if there's a Yom Tip succeeding or followed by Shabbat, you light before the start.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
And then you keep
And the only thing I can
transferring it
think
every
of
24
is
hours.
the only thing I can think of the reason for a 2-day Yahrzeit candle is some people are ultra strict and they wouldn't want to do that. Okay, Joanne, you want to continue with common practices?
When commemorated by a immediate relative, the day is marked by two main practices: reciting the mourner's Kaddish and lighting the Yahrzeit candle, which is kept burning for 24 hours. Other customs, including being called up to the public reading of the Torah or reciting the Haftarah on the preceding Shabbat, and sponsoring a synagogue kiddush in honor of the deceased. A light bulb by the name of the deceased may be lit on the synagogue's Yahrzeit board. Historically, fasting was also a common practice. According to some sources, the Yahrzeit candle holds Kabbalistic significance. Aaron Berchaya of Modena likes the burning wick in the candle to the soul in the body, citing the proverb, "Man's soul is the candle of God." He notes furthermore that the numerical value of the burning candle is equivalent to that of Shekinah. Other scholars posit that the candle lighting tradition may have Christian origins.
Oh, that's interesting. Alan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so this started by saying you say the mourner's Kaddish, which I've never heard, and been told by other rabbis not to, that is not a custom to say the mourner's Kaddish. I mean, it implies the presence of a minion, which
Yeah, so
again,
but if you're praying 3 times a day, there's no problem saying it on the Yahrzeit.
but if you're in if you're doing it on the practice that it was said earlier, that you'd be observing it in the synagogue on the day of the anniversary of the day of death, then it isn't. Then you would be saying the mourner's Kaddish anyway. But if you're not, then this isn't the practice that I've been led to believe, unless you're in a minion.
Yeah.
Okay, which
Yes.
it doesn't
Yes.
say here.
Right.
Uh,
So yes. So let me comment. Yes, the mourner's Kaddish is said in the presence of a minion because the Kaddish calls for a congregational response. There's a couple of amens, there's a brichu, and there's Yeheshme Rabba Mavorach Leolam Olamei Maya. So if you call for a response from a congregation, you have to address the question of how many Jews does it take to make a congregation, and the answer is 10. But as I say, I think what they're talking about here is if you're a traditional Jew, then you are going to be observing 3 services during the day of the Yahrzeit, even if it's a weekday. So you would then be saying the mourner's Kaddish on those 3 occasions. In the practice with which Alan and I are both familiar with, and many of you are familiar with, where most Jews are in synagogue only on Shabbat, then the only interesting question, and I think synagogues come out on both places, is do you say it on the Shabbat before or the Shabbat after the Yahrzeit? And I think most of the congregations I've been connected with would say it on the Shabbat after, but I don't
After.
know that there's any official decision on that. Let's say
Or
in the
on the Yahrzeit, you go to a synagogue that has the service, even
yes,
services every day, even and not to your regular, even if your own synagogue only does so one has the service once a week.
yes, absolutely. Or if you're not so observant, you say the Kaddish, even though you're not in a minyan. So as I say, once you've left the world of strict observance, then you have some flexibility to observe however you want. And, I always say when I'm counseling people on funerals and they're trying to make decisions and, they're wondering about, there's a lot of, specific rules about funerals and they're wondering what to do and what not to do. I always say, ask yourself two questions. How do we honor the person who has died? And how do we comfort people who love him or her? And so, once we've left the world of strict observance, then you, on ritual issues, you are going to make decisions for yourself. Okay, Joanne, some communities.
Okay, some communities, especially Sephardim in the land of Israel, were initially opposed to reciting the mourner's Kaddish after the first 11 months following a death, contending that it would cast a negative light on the departed. Isaac Luria offered an alternative perspective, explaining that while the orphan's Kaddish within the 11 months helps the soul to pass from Gehenna to Gan Eden, the Yahrzeit Kaddish elevates the soul every year to a higher sphere in paradise. Manasseh ben Israel also adopts this perspective.
Okay, so this is worth a comment. First of all, the business with 11 months. So the tradition is, and also Gehenna and Gan Eden, and also the phrase orphan's Kaddish. So first, the orphan's Kaddish, the Hebrew name for what we call the mourner's Kaddish is called the Kaddish Yatom, which means the orphan's Kaddish, said by a child for their parent, which, it's kind of interesting. And then, so the tradition is, and I know we've talked about this, that Judaism teaches the idea of I would call it like a purgatory, a place where you go to be purged of your sins. And the standard name is Gehenna. And so the idea is, or the teaching is, that no one is assigned to Gehenna for more than 12 months, except there's a bunch of sins for which you spend eternity in Gehenna. And so the tradition arose that if your parents are there, you recite the Kaddish for 11 months. And with the idea that the Kaddish, praising God in their name, actually is helping them atone for their sins. So why 11 months and not 12 months? It's a statement that you don't want to make a public statement that you really believe that mom and dad need to be there every last day to work off all of their sins. So rather than making your own independent judgment of how long it's going to take them, the Jewish tradition, or the traditional observance, is for 11 months. So this lends the idea that the Kaddish is casting a negative light on the departed. So you're saying even after the first year, you're still saying the Kaddish. Is that a negative connotation? And so that's Luria, who's one of the major names in Kabbalah, says no. The idea is that you're actually helping people attain higher and higher levels in the heavens. Alan.
This discussion of mourning practice, if I can call it that, is it? I'm not seeing how it's related to Yahrzeit.
Well, what they're saying,
yeah.
what they were talking about is they were opposed to reciting the mourner's Kaddish. I don't know that they were opposed to observing a Yahrzeit, but they were opposed to the recitation of the mourner's Kaddish on a Yahrzeit.
Yeah. Oh, on and on, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't, you may get to this, but I'm reminded, and I can't remember when, we had this discussion on a prayer. Would you give a prayer, say a prayer at the time of a Yahrzeit, assuming you weren't, in a Kaddish? And I can put into, I'm just going to put into chat, Suzanne Gallant, a while ago, a long time ago, obviously, actually wrote this prayer, and I got it from you guys in this class. I just put it in the chat. So does this article cover a
No,
prayer you would give?
it doesn't talk about that at all. And she wrote a beautiful poem.
Right,
So yeah, people feel like, because when you light candles, you feel like you ought to be saying something in Hebrew.
right, or something. Not
Yeah.
necessarily.
But there isn't a traditional saying that you make when you light either a Shiva candle or a Yahrzeit candle. So Suzanne, wrote one, and she did a very nice job. And I'll leave to you to take a look at that. Okay, Joanne, we're actually almost done with this article.
Hasidic Jews traditionally celebrate the Yahrzeit of their respective rabbis with song, dance, and general rejoicing, resulting in a shift from the originally mournful nature of the celebration to an occasion of joyous festivity. The Mitnagadim vehemently objected to this innovation.
So both the Hasidic Jews and the Mitnagdim are ultra-Orthodox Jews, and unless you know exactly what to look for, they dress pretty much alike. But the word Mitnagdim actually refers to those who are opposed. And who are they opposed to? They're opposed to the Hasidic. So so they would argue about everything. The other thing is, yeah, okay, let's talk about, we only have like 2 more paragraphs to go. So let's read the end of it and I can talk a little bit more.
The most widely observed Yahrzeit are on the 7th of Adar 1, the anniversary of Moses' death. Lag Ba'omer, the Yahrzeit of Simeon ben Yochai, observed at his tomb in Meron since at least the 16th century, and the fast of Gedaliah, the date of Gedaliah ben Ahakam's assassination. A Yahrzeit celebration in honor of Meir Baal Hanes is held in Tiberias on the 15th of Iyar in Morocco. Annual pilgrimages are made to the tombs of Isaac ben Walid and Chaim Pinto on the anniversaries of their deaths. Until the Second World War, the Yahrzeit of Moses Israelis was observed in Krakow on the 18th of Iyar. In the state of Israel, the Yahrzeits of national figures are observed as holidays such as Ben Gurion Day, Herzl Day, Jabotinsky Day, and Rabin Day.
Yeah, and I would say also in Morocco, there was, what Sonia would always describe as the festivals of the saints, and the word saint I think has a Christian connotation in English, but it's a pretty good translation of tzaddikim, the death of the righteous. And Sonia would describe going to the graves of famous, honored rabbis in Morocco on the Yahrzeit, and there would be masses of people. And she would describe what would amount to a bonfire of paraffin as people lit more and more candles on the tombs, and everything would start melting and running together. And I have seen some of these, and you do see that in Meron, the one that they mentioned. And there's a bunch of, I love Wikipedia because it's well footnoted. So I am going to stop sharing. And Alan, you have your hand up.
Oh, sorry. No,
Oh, that's
I didn't-
okay.
That's well,
That's
yeah.
okay. That's okay. Okay, so we are a little bit early. I'm pretty sure we're meeting next week, unless there's any Jewish holiday that has crept up that I'm blissfully unaware of. That's going to be May Day, but that's not a Jewish holiday. Yeah, we will be meeting next Wednesday. I have not yet picked a topic. It's one of the things I hope to actually get to tonight. Take a look at various topics, and I continue to wish you a good and sweet Passover. And I always am enjoying my
I got a
Matzah.
weird hypothetical.
Okay.
In the beliefs of people who believe that when the Messiah comes, people will be reincarnated. When that occurs,
Resurrected. Hold on. Resurrected, not reincarnated.
what's the difference?
Reincarnated means your soul comes into a different body. Resurrected means your soul and your original body are rejoined and come back to existence.
Okay, the question is, will we continue to say Kaddish and observe the sight of those people who are no longer dead on the anniversary of when they temporarily died? Or
Okay,
will we stop
so what
once
I
they're
would
back
say
alive?
is, Stephen, when you have your Passover Seder and we have Elijah's cup, the reason for Elijah's cup is it's a question mark whether we're supposed to drink a fifth cup of wine at the Seder, and the rabbis couldn't decide whether or not we should drink the fifth cup of wine. So they said, we're going to prepare the fifth cup of wine, and when Elijah comes with the Messiah, we will ask Elijah, should we drink this? Or we'll ask the Messiah, actually, should we drink this cup of wine? And then the very next thing is, Stephen, you will ask the Messiah, as the crowd of relatives is tunneling their way to Jerusalem, do we continue to observe their Yahrzeit? And all I can say is Bim Hera v'Yameinu. I don't know the
Now
answer.
that explanation for Elijah's cup makes a lot more sense. I always thought it was that Elijah was supposed to drink all these cups of wine all over the world, and I was thinking how drunk he must get. But
Yes.
your theory.
No, I'm pretty confident that the explanation I just gave you is the explanation. I will tell you one fun story. I wonder if I can find, oh God, father-elect. Let me see if I can find this guy's picture.
Of
If
course.
it were that way, it would be Elijah in his cups.
Exactly, very well said.
However, going one step further, I like this kind of hypothetical was the right word. If we believe that we're waiting for a messianic era as opposed to a Messiah, then would that affect how one would look at the original date of death when you hadn't been reincarnated?
I would say God knows, but I want to show you a picture of a
Yes,
friend of mine, a guy that I meet regularly on Zoom. This is Father Alexi Smith. He is a Catholic priest, and he is the guy in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. I think it's Los Angeles Archdiocese, in charge of interfaith relations. And so he knows a lot of rabbis. And he told us, I meet with a group of rabbis and priests, including Elliot Dorff, once a month, and we discuss different topics. And we were discussing Passover, and he told the story of him being invited to a Seder. And he was running late. And he shows up at the Seder, and for reasons he didn't quite understand, the door was open. So he goes into the Seder, and there's a chair at the Seder. Now look at this guy, right? He looks like what you'd expect Elijah to look like. Well, he went in and sat down as everybody is singing Eliyahu Hanavi, and the kids started absolutely freaking out. So I can never think of Elijah's cup in exactly the same way again. He is a very, very nice guy.
Did anybody ask about your anniversary of death and how that gets handled? Your priest friend, can he answer that question? The role he played, he could answer that.
He understand the role of Elijah and so on.
No, I meant the other question. You said earlier.
Oh, no. We're pretty sure that if he was bringing the Messiah, he wouldn't mean the same thing by Messiah as we mean anyway. So, yeah,
that's
a
great story.
It's a great story, and he really does look like. I guess Elijah's beard would probably be longer, but who am I to say? Okay, on that joyous note, I will wish you all a happy continuation of Passover. One of the things I do know about intermediate days of Passover and Sukkot and so on is you don't put tefillin on in the morning service. So if that's your custom to put tefillin on every morning, you get the week off. Like on Shabbat, we don't put tefillin on. So I'm sure that's of great importance and significance to all of you. So take care and Chag Sameach.
That
Excellent.
saved me a lot of time.
I'm trying to think of it. Is it still the
Everybody-
second day or is it already the intermediate day?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Stephen?
I said, come to think of it right now, is it still the second day of Passover? Or is it now the first intermediate day?
If it's after sunset, it's the intermediate day. If it's before sunset,
That's what I'm asking. I'm not
Yes.
sure what time.
yeah,
would be
I mean,
tonight.
I think actually somebody was saying, well, look at my calendar, that Havdalah is like 8:30. So, but I don't know where that was. Let's see.
Where you are, but where I am,
Yeah.
it's a little earlier.
Yeah, so candle lighting time around, oh, that's September. We're in April.
April 24th.
Sorry. So let's see when is Havdalah? Do they say? No, they don't say Havdalah time. But candle lighting time, which is 18 minutes before sunset, around now is 7:42. So I would say Havdalah would be closer to 9 o'clock. So we're still in the second day. Okay, on that technical note, I will wish you a Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach,
Mhm.
everybody.
That's